Captain Vextar stared at his console screens with confusion. The data made no sense. His exploration ship, Void Seeker, had traveled to this forgotten corner of space to survey the ruins of Sol 3, a planet that should have been dead for 300 years. The official records were clear. This world had been cleansed during the Great Purge, when the hegemony eliminated thousands of primitive species before they could become threats. But the sensors told a different story. Where there should be silence, his instruments detected powerful energy readings. Where there should be empty space, orbital platforms hung in perfect formation around the planet. Most shocking of all, a massive structure stretched from the planet's surface into space. Some kind of elevator that defied everything he knew about primitive technology. Vextar's second officer, a nervous creature with too many eyes, approached his command chair. Captain, these readings cannot be correct. This system was sterilized by Fleet Admiral Corthon himself. The reports say the planet burned for weeks. I know what the reports say, Vextar replied, his voice tight with worry. But look at those energy signatures. That's not the radiation of a dead world. That's active technology. Advanced technology. The blue and green planet hung before them like a jewel, its surface covered in swirling clouds. It looked healthy, alive, nothing like the poisoned wasteland described in the military files. Massive structures orbited the world, their purpose unknown but their sophistication obvious. This was not the work of a primitive species. Should we report this to command? His officer asked. Vextar hesitated. Reporting anomalies was standard procedure, but this was beyond an anomaly. This was impossible. If he was wrong, his career would be over. If he was right, the implications were terrifying. Not yet. We investigate first. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, 3 kilometers down in a facility that officially did not exist, Admiral Hana Kim watched the alien ship on her screens. She had been born in these underground cities, raised on stories of the day humanity had to disappear from the galaxy's sight. Her grandmother had lived through the Great Deception, when Earth's brightest minds had faked their own destruction to escape the hegemony's cleansing fleets. Contact bearing 27 Mark V, Admiral, her sensor operator reported. Hegemony. Design, exploration class, they're scanning our outer perimeter. Hana nodded calmly, though her heart raced. This was the moment every human had prepared for since the day they went into hiding. The moment when their 3-century masquerade would either hold or crumble completely. How many ships? She asked. Just one, ma'am. But they're transmitting. Data bursts back toward hegemony space. More will come. Around the command center, dozens of technicians worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. These were the descendants of the people who had built humanity's greatest lie. When the hegemony fleets had arrived centuries ago, they had found exactly what they expected, a world burning itself to death in nuclear fire. The radiation signatures had been perfect, the destruction complete, the desperate final transmissions from the surface heartbreaking in their authenticity. What the aliens had not known was that every human on Earth had already moved underground. The burning cities were empty shells. The nuclear explosions were carefully controlled. The radiation was artificial, designed to mask the real energy signatures of the underground civilization that continued to grow and thrive. Admiral, the probe ship is moving to a closer orbit, another technician reported. Their scans are getting more detailed. Hana walked to the main display where Earth's true face was revealed. Beneath the carefully maintained surface of a dead world lay the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Cities carved from solid rock housed billions of humans. Factories deep in the planet's crust produced technology that made hegemony weapons look like children's toys. And throughout the solar system, hidden bases and monitoring stations kept watch for exactly this moment. Are our surface camouflage systems still active? Hana asked. Yes, ma'am. As far as their scans can tell, the surface is still poisoned wasteland. But those orbital platforms, we're supposed to stay hidden for another 50 years, Hana finished. The space elevator and orbital facilities were part of humanity's next phase of development. They had been built in secret, designed to remain invisible to casual scans. But this hegemony ship was looking too closely. The probe ship continued, its orbit, its alien crew growing more confused with each passing minute. The energy readings were impossible to ignore, but they made no sense. How could a dead world produce such massive power signatures? How could a cleansed planet support orbital construction? "Ma'am," her communications officer said quietly, "we're intercepting their transmissions. They're requesting backup from the nearest hegemony base, a full investigation fleet." Hana closed her eyes for a moment. 300 years of careful planning, of patient waiting, of building strength in secret. All of it had led to this moment. The masquerade was ending, whether humanity was ready or not. "How long until the investigation fleet arrives?" she asked. 6 days, Admiral." Hana opened her eyes and looked around the command center at the faces of her people. They were afraid, but they were ready. They were the children of the greatest deception in galactic history, and they would not disappoint their ancestors. "Then we have 6 days to prepare for war," she said quietly. "Send the activation codes to all hidden facilities. Wake up the fleet. After 3 centuries of playing dead, it's time to show the galaxy what humanity has become." The masquerade was over. The real battle was about to begin. Dr. Mina Lee walked slowly through the corridors of New Geneva, her footsteps echoing, in the vast underground complex. At 347 years old, she was one of the last living witnesses to the Great Deception. Her body remained strong thanks to the life extension treatments that humanity had developed in secret, but her memories carried the weight of 3 centuries. She remembered the day when Earth's leaders had made the impossible choice. The hegemony. Fleets were coming, and there was no way to fight them directly. Humanity's weapons were primitive compared to the alien technology. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Their defenses would crumble in hours. But humanity had one advantage the aliens never expected. They were brilliant liars. "Tell me again about the burning cities, Dr. Lee," said Jin Park, her young assistant. He was only 25, born deep underground like all humans of his generation. The surface world was just a story to him, something from the history books. Mina smiled sadly as they entered the main observation deck. Through the massive windows, they could see the underground city spreading out below them. Millions of people lived and worked in the carved stone chambers, their lives hidden from the galaxy above. Gardens grew under artificial suns. Children played in parks that had never seen real sky. It was beautiful, but it was also a prison. "The cities weren't really burning," Mina explained for the 100th time. "We built fake structures on the surface, empty shells that looked like our real buildings. When the hegemony scouts arrived, we detonated them with conventional explosives. From space, it looked like nuclear war. The plan had been incredibly complex. Every detail had to be perfect. The radiation signatures had to match exactly what the aliens expected from a species, destroying itself. The radio transmissions had to sound desperate and real. The atmospheric changes had to convince the hegemony that Earth was becoming uninhabitable. Meanwhile, in the months before the aliens arrived, humanity had performed the greatest evacuation in history. 8 billion people had moved underground, into cities that had been carved from solid rock. Entire forests had been transplanted into vast caverns. Animals had been saved in underground preserves. Even the oceans had been partially drained and moved to massive artificial lakes deep beneath the surface. "But how did we fool their sensors?" Jin asked. "The hegemony technology was so advanced." Mina laughed bitterly. "That was the easy part. We studied their scout ships for months before the main fleet arrived. We learned how their scanners worked, what they looked for, how they interpreted data. Then we gave them exactly what they wanted to see. The atmospheric processors had been the key. Humanity had built hundreds of them, machines that could create false energy signatures and fake radiation clouds. When the hegemony ships scanned Earth, they detected exactly the right amount of radioactive decay, exactly the right temperature patterns, exactly the right atmospheric composition of a world dying from nuclear war. The aliens had even landed on the surface to investigate. They found burned cities, poisoned soil, and dead bodies, all carefully prepared fakes. The bodies were realistic mannequins filled with the right chemicals. The poison in the soil was harmless but looked deadly to alien scanners. The radiation was produced by hidden machines that could be turned on and off. For 6 months, the hegemony had watched Earth die. They monitored the last desperate transmissions from the surface. They documented the final collapse of human civilization. They filed their reports and moved on to cleanse the next system. They never knew that, beneath their feet, 8 billion humans were building the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. "Show me the production numbers," Mina said to Jin as they reached her office. Jin activated the holographic displays that filled the room. Charts and graphs showed the incredible progress humanity had made in secret. Their technology had advanced at an impossible rate, freed from the need to appear primitive to alien observers. The power generation systems alone were a miracle. Deep beneath the Earth's crust, fusion reactors provided unlimited energy. The heat from the planet's core was captured and converted into electricity. Entire underground rivers had been dammed to power massive factories. Those factories produced weapons and ships that made hegemony technology look ancient. Humanity had studied captured alien equipment for centuries, reverse engineering and improving on every design. Their new warships could appear and disappear at will, using stealth, systems that bent light and gravity. Their weapons could punch through alien shields like paper. But the most important development was not technological, it was psychological. 300 years of living in secret had changed humanity. They had learned patience, discipline, and unity in ways that the individualistic alien species could never understand. Every human knew their role in the Great Deception. Every child was raised to understand the importance of staying hidden. "How many ships do we have now?" Mina asked. "Over 10,000, Dr. Lee, all hidden throughout the solar system. The aliens think this is empty space, but we have battle fleets waiting in every asteroid belt and gas cloud." Mina nodded with satisfaction. The solar system had become a trap of incredible complexity. Hidden bases on every moon and planet. Weapons platforms disguised as space debris. Entire fleets waiting in locations that appeared empty to alien scanners. And it was not just Earth. For 2 centuries, humans had been secretly spreading throughout the galaxy. They looked enough like other species to blend in when necessary. Millions of humans now lived on alien worlds, working as laborers, traders, and even government officials. They had been gathering intelligence, sabotaging enemy systems, and preparing for this day. The hegemony thought they ruled 1,000 worlds. They had no idea that their empire was filled with human agents, their technology compromised by human hackers, their military plans known to human spies. "The masquerade is ending," Mina said quietly. "After 3 centuries of playing dead, we're about to show the galaxy what we've become." Commander Zalthek stared at his tactical display in complete disbelief. His investigation fleet of 12 ships had arrived at the Sol system expecting to find a simple anomaly, perhaps some automated system still running on the dead world. Instead, they had discovered something that challenged everything the hegemony believed about the galaxy. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system," his sensor officer reported, his voice shaking. "There are structures hidden in the asteroid belt, installations on the moons, and, sir, there's an entire fleet of ships that just appeared out of nowhere." Zalthek watched as dozens of sleek vessels materialized around his fleet. They had been invisible moments before, completely undetectable by the most advanced sensors in the hegemony arsenal. The ships were unlike anything he had ever seen, smooth, deadly, and radiating power that made his own warships look like primitive toys. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "The records clearly state this species was eliminated 3 centuries ago." His communications officer suddenly straightened. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from one of the unknown vessels. They're speaking in perfect hegemony standard." On his main screen, the image of a human woman appeared. She wore a uniform that looked military, but the design was unfamiliar. Her dark eyes were calm, but there was something dangerous in her, expression that made Zalthek's blood run cold. "I am Captain Gina of the Earth defense ship Lazarus," she said, her voice clear and steady. "You tried to kill us once. We've spent 3 centuries making sure you can never try again." Zalthek tried to maintain his composure, but his hands were shaking. "This is Commander Zalthek of the Hegemony Investigation Fleet. You are in violation of galactic law. This system was legally cleansed under the authority of the Hegemony Council." Captain Gina smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Your law means nothing here, Commander. You are surrounded by 47 combat vessels, each one capable of destroying your entire fleet. You have exactly 1 minute to explain why we shouldn't treat you the same way you treated us." Around the command bridge, Zalthek's crew was frantically trying to understand what they were facing. The tactical computers couldn't get a proper read on the human ships. Their stealth technology was beyond anything in hegemony science. Their weapons were charging with energy levels that should have been impossible for ships of their size. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "I'm reading similar signatures throughout the galaxy. There are human vessels emerging from hiding in over 50 different star systems. They're revealing themselves simultaneously across hegemony space." The scope of the deception was becoming clear, and it was terrifying. This was not just one hidden colony that had escaped destruction. This was an entire shadow civilization that had been growing in secret for 300 years, spreading throughout the galaxy while the hegemony believed they were extinct. "How many of you are there?" Zalthek asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "More than you can imagine," Captain Gina replied. "We've been among you for centuries. Your miners, your traders, your technicians. Many of them have been human for generations. We've been watching, learning, and preparing." Zalthek felt sick. The hegemony prided itself on knowing everything that happened within its territory. They had sensors on every world, monitors in every system, agents in every government. The idea that an entire species had been operating under their noses was impossible to accept. "Show me," he said. Captain Gina nodded to someone off-screen. Suddenly, Zalthek's displays lit up with information that changed everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. Hidden bases on dozens of worlds, underground cities on planets that were supposed to be uninhabited, mining operations that had been secretly controlled by humans for decades. Most shocking of all were the personnel files. Thousands of individuals that the hegemony had trusted, had worked with, had promoted to positions of authority, all of them human agents working for Earth's shadow government. "Your Admiral Korthon, the one who led the original cleansing fleet," Captain Gina said casually. "His personal assistant for the past 20 years has been one of ours. She's been copying his files and sending them to us every day." Zalthek's blood turned to ice. Admiral Korthon was one of the most powerful military leaders in the hegemony. If his personal staff had been compromised, then no secret was safe. "What do you want?" he asked, though he already feared the answer. "We want what you took from us," Captain Gina replied. 3 centuries ago, you tried to murder our entire species because you were afraid of what we might become. You forced us to abandon our homes, our surface cities, our way of life. You made us into something we never wanted to be. Around Earth, more human ships were appearing every minute. The planet that had seemed dead was revealing itself as the center of a vast military network, orbital platforms armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets, space stations that had been hidden for centuries, a civilization that had grown in secret until it was more powerful than the empire that had tried to destroy it. "We've learned from your example," Captain Gina continued. "We know what happens to species that show weakness in this galaxy. So we became strong. We became invisible. We became everything you feared we might be." Zalthek looked at his tactical display again. His 12 ships were now surrounded by over 100 human vessels, with more appearing every few minutes. The humans had turned the Sol system into a fortress that could destroy any fleet that entered it. "The age of hegemony dominance is over, Commander," Captain Gina said. "A new power has risen in the galaxy. We are no longer the frightened primitives you tried to exterminate. We are your equals now. And we remember everything you did to us." The transmission ended, leaving Zalthek alone with the terrible realization that the galaxy had just changed forever. The emergency alarm echoed through the halls of the Hegemony Council chambers as representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered in panic. High Counselor Velthar had never seen such chaos in his 40 years of service. Reports were streaming in from every corner of the galaxy, each one more impossible than the last. The mining operation on Kepler 442 has been shut down, announced Counselor Zexran, her voice shaking as she read from her datapad. Half the workforce revealed themselves to be human agents. They've been sabotaging the equipment for 30 years. The same thing is happening on Vega Prime, added another counselor. The humans in our factories have been sending our industrial secrets to Earth for decades. They know how to build everything we build, but better. Fleet Admiral Corthon stood at the center of the chamber, his uniform perfect, despite the disaster unfolding around him. He was the architect of the Great Cleansing, the military genius who had eliminated hundreds of primitive species before they could threaten the hegemony. But now, his greatest victory was turning into his greatest defeat. "How many worlds are affected?" he asked his aide, though he dreaded the answer. "Sir, we have confirmed human activity on over 300 planets. They're not just hiding anymore. They're taking control. Critical infrastructure, government, databases, military installations. They've been infiltrating everything." Corthon felt old for the first time in his life. The species he had personally ordered destroyed had been living among them for centuries. They had been his servants, his workers, his trusted employees. They had smiled at him, worked for him, and all the while, they had been planning his downfall. "Show me Earth," he commanded. The massive holographic display at the center of the chamber shifted to show the Sol system. What they saw made several counselors gasp in horror. The planet that had been dead for 3 centuries was transforming before their eyes. Huge structures were rising from beneath the surface like metal mountains. Weapons platforms the size of cities were emerging from hidden chambers. Space elevators were extending massive defense networks into orbit. "By the void," whispered Counselor Velthar, "it's not a planet anymore. It's a fortress." The transformation was happening at incredible speed. Clearly, the humans had been preparing for this moment for decades. The installations rising from the Earth's surface were not being built. They were being revealed. They had been there all along, hidden beneath the facade of a dead world. "Sir," Corthon's communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's addressed to the full council." "Put it through," Corthon ordered, though every instinct told him he didn't want to hear what the humans had to say. The image that appeared on the main screen was of a human woman in her middle years, wearing a simple uniform with no decorations. She stood in what appeared to be a vast command center, with thousands of other humans working at stations behind her. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held a coldness that made Corthon's blood freeze. "I am Director Sue of the Earth Unified Government," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I am speaking to you from the world you tried to murder 3 centuries ago." Murmurs of fear rippled through the assembled counselors. This was the first time any of them had seen a living human, and the reality was far more unsettling than they had imagined. The woman looked completely ordinary, but there was something in her bearing that spoke of tremendous hidden power. "You have discovered that we are not extinct," Director Sue continued. "You have learned that we have been among you, studying you, learning from you. What you have not yet realized is the full scope of your situation." Corthon stepped forward. "Human, you are addressing the Hegemony Council. You will show proper respect." Director Sue smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Respect? You tried to commit genocide against my species. You destroyed our surface cities, forced us underground, and celebrated our supposed extinction. Why should we show you respect?" "Because we are the Hegemony," Corthon replied, trying to maintain his authority. "We rule this galaxy. We have the largest fleets, the most advanced weapons, the strongest military in known space." "Had," Director Sue corrected. "You had those things, but your fleets have been infiltrated by our agents. Your weapons have been sabotaged by our technicians. Your military secrets have been copied by our spies. For 3 centuries we have been preparing for war, while you believed you were at peace." The display behind her changed to show a map of the galaxy. Red dots began appearing on hundreds of worlds, each one representing a human installation or fleet that had just revealed itself. The scope was staggering. Humans had been everywhere, watching everything, preparing for this moment. "You thought you were hunting a primitive species," Director Sue said. "Instead, you created your own replacement, We are faster, smarter, and more unified than you could ever be. We have turned your own empire against you." Korthon felt the weight of his failure crushing down on him. "What do you want?" "We want justice," Director Sue replied. "Complete demilitarization of all hegemony forces, reparations for 3 centuries of stolen labor and resources, and formal recognition of human authority over this galaxy." The chamber erupted in protests. Counselors shouted their refusal, their outrage, their demands for immediate military action. But Korthon remained silent, staring at the display showing Earth's transformation. Massive weapon arrays were now visible on the planet's surface, pointing outward toward space. The world that had once been helpless was now the most heavily armed planet in the galaxy. "You have 48 hours to consider our terms," Director Sue said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "After that, we will demonstrate why resistance is futile. We have been preparing for this war for 3 centuries. We know every weakness in your defenses, every flaw in your strategy. We know because we helped build them." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The hegemony, which had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years, had just been given an ultimatum by a species they thought they had destroyed. And for the first time in their history, they were afraid. Admiral Hana stood on the newly restored surface of Earth, breathing real air under a real sky for the first time in her life. Around her, gardens bloomed where fake ruins had stood for centuries. Rivers flowed freely where poisoned wasteland had been carefully maintained. The transformation was almost magical, a dead world coming back to life. But the most amazing sight was the people. Millions of humans were emerging from the underground cities, blinking in the sunlight like children seeing their first sunrise. Many were crying, some were laughing. All of them were finally free to live on the surface of their home world. "Bureau, hegemony delegation is approaching, Admiral," her aide reported. Lieutenant Tay was young, born in the deep tunnels like most of his generation. He kept looking up at the sky with wonder, still not quite believing it was real. Hana nodded and walked toward the landing pad where the alien ships were setting down. The war had lasted only 6 months, but it had changed everything. The hegemony, fleets that had once terrorized the galaxy, were now broken and scattered. Their proud admirals were coming to Earth not as conquerors, but as defeated enemies seeking mercy. The war had been unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity fought, with perfect coordination, as if they were all parts of a single mind. While hegemony species argued among themselves and competed for glory, humans worked together with a unity that was impossible to defeat. Their technology had been superior in every way. Ships that could appear and disappear at will, weapons that could cut through any defense. Most importantly, they had known every hegemony weakness because they had been watching and learning for 3 centuries. "Look at them," Lieutenant Tay whispered as the alien diplomats emerged from their ships. "They're terrified." Hana could see it too. These were representatives of species that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years, but now they moved like frightened children. They had never faced an enemy that understood them so completely, that had studied every aspect of their military and culture. Fleet Admiral Korthon was among the delegation, the old warrior who had led the original cleansing of Earth. He looked smaller now, broken by the knowledge that his greatest victory had created his greatest defeat. When he saw Hana, he stopped walking and stared. "You look just like them," he said quietly. "The humans we killed 3 centuries ago. How is that possible?" Hana smiled sadly. "We are them, Admiral. We are their children and grandchildren. We never forgot what you did to us. We never forgave." The surrender ceremony was held in what had once been New York City. The towers that rose from the earth were beautiful, made of materials that seemed to glow with their own light. Gardens covered every surface. The air was clean and sweet, filled with the sounds of birds that had been preserved in underground aviaries for centuries. Thousands of humans gathered to watch as their former oppressors signed the documents that would change the galaxy forever. The hegemony was disbanded. Their fleets were to be destroyed or converted to peaceful purposes. Their weapons of mass destruction were to be eliminated. Most importantly, they were to pay reparations for centuries of conquest and oppression. This is not just about us, Hana explained to the assembled delegates. You have destroyed hundreds of species over the millennia. You have enslaved entire worlds. You have committed genocide as a matter of policy. That ends now. Counselor Velthar, once one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, signed the surrender documents with shaking hands. What happens now, he asked. Will you rule us the way we ruled others? Hana considered the question carefully. Around her, the other human leaders waited for her answer. They had the power to do anything they wanted. They could enslave the hegemony species, destroy their worlds, take revenge for centuries of suffering. But that was not the human way. We will watch, she said finally. We will make sure that no species ever again has the power to destroy another. The galaxy will learn to live in peace or face the consequences. As the days passed, the alien delegates toured Earth's restored cities. They saw the underground complexes where humans had lived for centuries, the factories that had produced the weapons that defeated them, the schools where human children had learned to hate their oppressors. But they also saw something else. They saw humans caring for injured hegemony prisoners. They saw human doctors treating alien diseases. They saw human engineers helping to rebuild damaged worlds. The species that had every right to seek revenge was instead trying to heal the galaxy's wounds. I don't understand them, Admiral Korthan confessed to his aide as they walked through a human hospital. We tried to exterminate them. We would have succeeded if they hadn't been so clever. Yet they treat our wounded soldiers like their own. Perhaps that's why they won, sir, his aide replied. They never lost their humanity, even when we tried to take it from them. Earth's transformation was complete within a year. The planet that had pretended to be dead was now the most beautiful world in the galaxy. Its people, who had lived in darkness for centuries, were now the guardians of the light. The hegemony species learned to live under human supervision. Some resented it, but most came to appreciate the peace that humanity brought. Wars between species became rare. Slavery was abolished throughout the galaxy. The strong were no longer allowed to prey upon the weak. Admiral Hana often stood on Earth's surface in the evening, watching the stars and thinking about the long journey her people had taken. They had started as a primitive species facing extinction. They had become the most powerful force in the galaxy through patience, intelligence, and unity. But power, she knew, was not the point. The point was to make sure that what happened to humanity never happened to anyone else. The galaxy would have peace whether it wanted it or not. The age of the hegemony was over. The age of humanity had begun.